Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
The Babylon Project was our last best hope for peace. It failed. But in the year of the Shadow War, it became something greater. Our last best hope for victory. The year is 2260. The place, Babylon 5.
Welcome to Filibuster. I'm Phillip Gilfus, joined once again by...
Commander Charlynn Schmiedt.
That's right. And we are doing our third part of our 6-part series on Babylon 5. And so, this being our third part, we are going to cover Season 3 of Babylon 5. And it has been a while. We just like to keep the tension going, at the end of Season 2. Everyone's on the edge of their seats,
Yeah,
right?
it's that rising action, right? We are making you wait for it.
Exactly. And of course, talking about cliffhangers, that's what we'll definitely be talking about by the end of this episode. But for this season of Babylon 5, one thing we were looking at with the stories that happen and all the characters, usually we've been going in this series by characters, taking each character by him or herself and kind of going through what happened to them. But this is a season of war. Maybe there's been kind of little bits of it happening in 1 and 2, but by this time, literally Season 2 ended with the Centauri Earth non-aggression treaty, but then you had war breaking out with all the non-aligned worlds in the Centauri, and the shadows making their way, and rumblings happening on Earth. But this season, war is among us. It is here. We are at it. Everything's out in the open by the end of the season. Between Earth and the shadows, and so we're going to split this up, which in a war on two fronts, as Char called it earlier. Yeah. And so we're going to start with the Earth conflict.
Right.
And so, yes, so a quick summary. This will be very quick of the sort of rumblings within the Earth Alliance. We begin this season with still rumblings happening. President Clark and Night Watch and all these different organizations are still kind of working their way through, showing themselves their agenda and everything. And it all sort of reaches the breaking point with the President Clark's declaration of martial law.
The point of no return.
Exactly. And then once that happens, that causes obviously a big ruckus. And then we have President Clark's bombing of civilians on Mars and other places, and that's what finally breaks the camel's back. You have Orion and I believe Proxima declaring independence, and that's when Captain Sheridan finally decides to declare independence from Earth. They're attacked by Earth Alliance forces, of course, so they can take control. You have Night Watch going to take control, but long story short, Babylon 5 remains independent, and sort of the rest of the season, we have to deal with an independent Babylon 5. And what does it mean to be, in conflict with Earth, away from Earth? How do we survive on our own? What does this mean?
Yeah.
And everything else. So anything I left out of the sort of that broad summary, Char?
Those are good broad strokes. And now we can get into more of the details because so much is going on, just even with this conflict, much less the other one we got to get to later for this episode, but one at a time. So.
Right. And one of the things we see visually, and I believe this is Earth story related, though you can certainly flip it to the shadows, but you see literally the logo change this season.
We get a new logo and new uniforms.
Yes. So instead of the 5 with sort of the olive branch, the vertical olive branch, sort of Babylon 5 is a place of peace, no longer. We now have the 5 with the shield and the sword, and so we are at war.
We mean business now.
So, yes. I believe that should be the name of the season.
Well, JMS certainly was meaning business when he wrote this season, because he wrote the entirety of this whole season, which I believe was certainly the first time I think that this has ever happened in the history of television, and maybe it's been the only time for good reason. I mean, I think the dude's health, as the season went on, I think just slowly kind of took a tailspin, because this was all he could possibly focus on. His intention for 22 episodes?
Right.
Yeah, that's a lot of freaking work, but I kind of get it at the same time. I mean, it's really hard to tell somebody all these things that you have to set into motion to keep the story going at this point. And if you've just got it all in your own head, it's less work actually to write it all yourself than to explain it to somebody else and have them do it and get it wrong and say, no, you've got to do this, this, and this, because down the road this is going to happen. And then, no, you've created more work for yourself. So for as much of a labor as this was, it was the best thing, and he knew it, and he rolled with it.
Right. I think I was reading in Lurker's Guide, of course, our favorite Babylon 5 website, that someone was discussing with him on the Usernet channel or whatever, that, with the Hugo Awards submissions, obviously many episodes of Babylon 5 throughout its run were entered in Hugo Awards, and some of them were awarded the Hugo Awards. I can't remember off the top of my head. But someone suggested he could do the entire season 3, plop it down on the Hugo Awards and say, Babylon 5 season 3 by J. Michael Straczynski, and that would be, he's like, well, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
He's like, you're not, if anyone else had written it, no, that would be wrong. But yeah, you're right. You could do this as one entry.
Totally. He should have done that. He should have handed just the whole season on a silver platter and said, here you go. I did that.
Blue. So, as I said, we'll be talking about many characters, but just as far as the Earth conflict goes, and with Babylon 5 Independence, of course, the main character is not hard to say, is Captain John Sheridan. So, Char, what do we see from Captain Sheridan throughout the sort of the beginning of the season with President Clark still in power, and then the revelations of what has happened with President Clark and President Santiago and all that, and then the ramifications and subsequently independence? Okay,
yeah, a lot going on here. Sheridan goes through quite a big transition here. I mean, he has a lot of big decisions he has to make as things go, because we start off the season pretty much where season 2 left off. I mean, we know that there's something not terribly great happening on Earth. We know that President Clark is just not a good guy. We don't completely know just how much of a sleazeball he really is, but we know he's not a good guy. And then in season 3, we start to see little things slowly try to, take over. Like we have that, the political officer from the Ministry of Peace, that lady,
yes,
whom, I see her on screen. I'm just, no, I do not like this episode. You get away from my Johnny. No, leave him alone. He's Delens. And so things like that. And we see Nightwatch taking just a little more charge, or at least trying to, and that sort of a thing. And so then we have his breaking point where he does go through with declaring martial law. He hates himself for it, and then he has to make a big decision. I mean, he's been a career Earth Force officer his whole life, and now he has to decide if he's going to follow orders or do what he, in his conscience, thinks is right. And we, of course, see he chooses what he thinks is right. He fights. And that means not wearing the uniform, which is a big freaking deal. I mean, we had a whole ceremony devoted to this, which is one of my favorite things, by the way, is that scene where they all give up their uniforms and they tell Delenn one of their most darkest secrets. It's such a great thing. But anyway, for John Sheridan, that is a huge freaking turning point. I mean, he sees what things are becoming, does not like it, and has to decide, what is he going to do here? And fortunately, he has the fantastic crew of Babylon 5 they see the same things that he does. They back him up. They're with him in this. He's not going over it alone, even though they kind of stand alone. Because Babylon 5 even though they have allies, right now, once they break free, they really are outnumbered. They really are. This is... it's tough. It's not a good situation to be in. So...
Yeah, I think one of the things you mentioned, and I just want to drill down for just a second, is Sheridan's sense of duty and identification with the Earth Alliance. And you mentioned it, but, it strikes me as one part of this season where Ivanova discovers through the Great Machine, or Draw's Machine, or whatever you want to call it, the sort of quote-unquote secret recording between Morden, at least we can tell from the voice, and President Clark about the assassination of President Santiago. And they get that recorded, they get it released, and you have that moment where, that information has gone out, it's out in the media on the ISN, and, there's committee hearings, all these things going on. No relevance to today, right?
No,
anyway,
nothing,
so there are all these
nothing.
hearings going on, investigations, and so you sort of have Sheridan going, hey, the truth's out. Everything we've worked for is done. We have done our part of letting the truth out. And then you have that moment when, and then the chronology is breaking apart a little bit in my head, but basically more or less, ISN, comes out and says they're kind of under attack by President Clark's forces. This, of course, near the end when after the Martian attacks and all that and bombing, and they're like, hey, we've been hiding a whole bunch of stuff. President Clark can't be trusted. ISN goes off.
Right.
And then you have this sort of period of silence, and everyone's like, what's going to happen? But everyone's still optimistic, right? Oh, it'll all work itself out. The truth will come out. And then you have that one moment when ISN comes back on finally, and they're like, this is going to be it. Problem solved. It comes on, and they're all like, hey, President Clark is awesome, guys. We sure glad we got rid of those, fake news people about, all what was going on, and you just have, turn it off, and then that's sort of that frustration of Sheridan,
right?
Literally, it's having to take off the uniform.
Right. It's not better. It is now much worse. ISN is now state-controlled TV, and so it's not getting better at all. That optimism, gone. All of their worst fears have come true. They were absolutely right about everything, and it's going to be a fight to the very bitter end. This is not going to just resolve itself, and things are going to go back to normal. Because I think you see characters, like especially Franklin, who kind of fights the idea of, oh, no, you know what? People on Earth are going to take care of this. It's going to be fine. We don't need to take on Earth. Oh, yeah, we do. If we don't do it, who is going to? We're actually maybe in the best position to do this. So we got to get going. And so Sheridan ultimately has to set that course, and he has Delen's help, of course. And I think one of his big breaking points, even before he breaks away from Earth, is in Messages from Earth, where he and Delen take the White Star, see what the shadows are doing. We can go into more detail on that later, but once he realizes how serious that is in regards to Earth, he's just, nope. Okay, this is bad. This is really, really bad.
and it kind of maybe seems hokey, but I like it, of where, like, when he's on that White Star mission, he goes in civilian clothes. Now, it's a bit of like, Mission Impossible, like, if you're discovered, we will, refuse any, knowledge of your identity or whatever.
Right.
But the fact that he has to take off his his jacket, uniform jacket, after that, I mean, not for that episode, but for later, and he's like, I can't put it on anymore. He's like, when this is done, that's when I'll put it on. And I think it's interesting. You also see the motif, kind of, it's not completely with everyone, but you even see some of the CNC folks. They're not out of uniform, but they're in a subdued uniform. Like, you don't see the blue jacket anymore.
Right.
You sort of see, like, the gray jumpsuit kind of.
It's kind of a modification, right? So anybody who kind of stands with what becomes the Army of Light, that's sort of their physical rendition of saying, I'm with you. Things are different. Now, speaking of the uniforms, just a quick side note.
Yes,
do you have a preference between Earth Force uniform or Army of Light uniform? Do you like one better than the other?
It's interesting. I'm looking right now at my Sheridan action figure who's in the Army of Light uniform. And, of course, when I think Babylon 5, I traditionally almost think of that one, the black uniform. But, of course, I think the blue Earth Alliance uniform, I guess because you see it so much, for 3 seasons, it kind of becomes old, right? But that's the uniform of Sinclair, and I don't know. To me, if I had to choose, like, if you give me, like, here, you can cosplay as either of these. I mean, the Army of Light does have that cool, I don't know what you call it, shawl or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
stole,
that they drape over it?
Stole.
I want that.
Sheridan will wear. I know, right? But
Sexy.
I'd want to try out the Earth Alliance. I'd want to wear
really?
the blues.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Army
I'd like
of
to
Light
fasten
all the way.
and zip. You can't do that in the Army of Light uniform. How are we ever going to answer the age-old question, Char?
That's true. That's very important. I mean, honestly, if I'm ever going to get some sort of like uniform cosplay, it's probably going to be an Army of Light uniform with that drape over, or the Ranger uniform where you've got that nice little silk sash. I mean, that thing is sexy too. There's some really good costumes in Babylon 5. I could not go for the elaborateness of a Centauri or maybe even a Minbari with all the layered robes and whatnot. Although, usually at a convention, the air conditioners are so freaking just pumping out such cold air that the layers might be a good idea, but I don't know if I could create a bulb.
Char.
So
I just
the uniform would do.
I feel like you'd be stunning in purple.
Not green? But I agree. I would be stunning in purple.
Now one character, and this will seem odd to go from Sheridan to this character, but when I was watching it, of course, I tend to watch it with my wife, or at least my wife is in the room, and I think a character that she thought was interesting to watch his struggle in this Earth conflict was Zack.
Yes.
Because Zack is in the Night Watch. And, often there's several scenes in several episodes where, Night Watch is asking him to do things, can you make the report? Can you confirm this? Can you do that? Can you see what the captain's doing? Can you report on that? And we'd often be like, oh, make the right decision, Zack. And he'd kind of struggle and then kind of go with Night Watch. And so you kind of see the struggle of, because a lot of this, I think with this story, you can kind of separate yourself and be like, oh, well, there's obviously a good side and a bad side. But, if we were in that world, Earth Alliance is the guy, or whatever you want to call it, the girl. But, like, that's
it.
The status quo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to think anything would be wrong with that or to go beyond that, that's a big leap. And so I think Zack's struggle to the very end, of this conflict in this season, you don't necessarily know which way he's going to go.
Right.
I mean, because he gets kind of alienated from Garibaldi at some point because Garibaldi's not letting him in and Zack's not in the know. So what does he know?
Right. Yeah. So you have that nice kind of dichotomy where Garibaldi is suddenly not trusting what has become his right-hand man because he's associated with Night Watch. And I love Zack's role in all of this because he is the everyman. He is who a lot of us would be if we were in Earth Force and facing a situation like this where you're kind of caught in the middle. I mean, I think if you sign up for Earth Force, you believe in Earth Force. But then suddenly, if you see it kind of getting corrupted, now what do you do? And so this is a great, great story, and I'm so glad we get to see more of Zack. He's the perfect guy for this, and suddenly Night Watch is not just this gig where you get 50 credits for wearing an armband. Suddenly, this is serious. And I love the fact that we are kind of questioning till the very end which side he's going to take. Because ultimately, you do have to take a side, sadly.
Yeah, and I think because often, and I'm not trying to get too philosophical here, but in various points in Earth history, in real Earth history, there have been people who have chosen sides. You're either this side or you're that side, or people who take no side, but often those are the worst people, the ones who are silent.
It's true.
The ones who let things happen and, I don't want to get involved, or it doesn't involve me, or, and I think that's where Zack is, and that's not a critique, that's very human. It's often hard to be bold, to risk your life and risk your career to make these decisions, and so I think it is interesting to see what Zack ultimately does,
right,
and helps bring down the Night Watch, or at least the Night Watch on Babylon 5, at least.
Yeah, because they've got to stage that little coup, and I love what Sheridan says about planting just a little bit of truth in a lie. Makes it. Does he say it's easier or harder to swallow it that way? I think it's easier.
Yes, it's easier.
But that's kind of how they get rid of
You're
Night
not
Watch.
understanding me, Captain. You've got to follow the chain of command.
Yes, I love the way that was constructed. You really have to read between the lines on that. You take it at face value, that guy just sounds like a jerk, but he's giving Sheridan instructions. Very clever. Now, as a result of shipping a lot of people out, as a result of Night Watch leaving the station, or at least most people, because they have to deal with a couple of stragglers for a little while, what ultimately happens for security? The Narn.
Yes, that's the Narn, and we'll get the G'Kar here when we talk about shadows, but we can talk a little bit, of course, that G'Kar offers up his Narn, or the Narn, as security forces, because as you said, that was a lot of Night Watch personnel who decided to go back to Earth. And you know what? Let's be honest. A lot of people probably would go back to Earth.
Sure.
I mean, and not necessarily, again, those are the people who maybe haven't made a choice, and that's not a critique. That's
or it's at least the
hey,
safer
you got a bunch
choice.
of radicals here.
You know, maybe they aren't sure if they're complicit in this or not, but I mean, you kind of are complicit by saying nothing, but at the same time, if you don't want to be there, you want to let them go. But yeah, I mean, it is hard to be brave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, but like you said, so the Narn have to take up station security. Which that when the Earth Alliance forces attack, they have to fight the Earth forces or the Earth Alliance forces. I mean, the Narn do.
Right, and they have no bones about that either, because Garibaldi, in Severed Dreams, he's setting his people up, because it's a combination of Babylon 5 security staff and Narns. They're like, we're going to set up right here and catch him, right in this position. And the Narn, they just storm right in. They're like, no, we're going to go on the front lines here and go out guns a-blazing. And they do. You see one fall and another and another and another. And it's such an incredibly powerful scene.
Right. And this is a bit in the Shadows story, but we still talk about it. G'Kar's mission for the Narn is now, the keyword is sacrifice.
Yes, big time.
And we can talk about it in the shadow section, but still, I mean, that's how G'Kar sees the Narn's role. And part of that can be with the Earth people, who he sees as the great hope for the long struggle. It also leads to some very comic moments throughout the season with the Narn security personnel, whether it's Londo checking in and having to deal with the dull-witted and
2-hour delays, the slow Narns, failure of Identicard to recognize who he is.
And sort of Londo gets his comeuppance, but sort of happens throughout the time where you'll see Narn personnel just sitting there, and Centauri just sort of have to take it because
that's the way
they're
it is.
in charge.
Yeah, deal with it. And so that's kind of a nice little punch back from the Centauri taking over the Narn.
Sure. And another small character who I just wanted to briefly mention, unless you is I don't know what he was before he was promoted. Well, I guess Lieutenant Corrin.
Oh yeah,
becomes, I guess, Lieutenant junior grade.
Yeah, we see his promotion and celebration at Earhart's.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so he, before the independence, of course, he has to pass a test. And
with Ivanova, no less.
Yes. And how do you think that worked out?
I like how they turned that into a comedy of errors, where Corwin is not sure what exactly this meeting is supposed to be. Like, is this a date? I mean, he's having coffee with his superior. He brings roses, expensive, nice, fancy roses, but then chickens out and says, "Oh, I just found them." And then come to realize, oh, she really likes them. She thinks they're great. Oh, well, and then we kind of, he sort of stumbles around just a little more, not entirely sure what the meeting's intention is, and does not completely communicate what Ivanova, I guess, wants to know or wants to hear, which would be, is he worthy of becoming part of that inner circle of her, Sheridan, Franklin, etc., as they start to figure out what to do about Earth before the you-know-what really hits the fan. And he kind of fails, and Marcus gets some flowers out of it.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, keep them. Thank you, I will. Such a great song. I love how the music just has like that little war march with the drums, and then just slap on the counter. There goes the flowers. So good, so Ivanova, so Marcus.
But I do like Lieutenant Corrin because, to me, he's in a weird position because when you're superior, and this is, commander above lieutenant, junior grades a couple steps. So she's,
Yeah.
farly superior. Ask you like, hey, do you think you should follow the regs? And like, yes, ma'am. I think, what else is he going to say?
Right.
And so,
Exactly. I mean, what are you really going to tell your superior? And you said that Ivanova is a superior. She's not just a superior. She is God.
That's true.
Let's
That's
not
true.
forget.
No offense. Yes. But yeah, and it's interesting to see sort of he is almost the first person that gets checked in with when independence is declared.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't forget if it's Susan or John who turns to him, and Lieutenant Corn's kind of like, a little surprising, but okay.
I'm in. Yeah, he was cool with it. And we've slowly, ever so slowly, seen him kind of grow in a little bit of prominence as a member of Command and Control. So that's cool, too.
And another, and I know we're avoiding major characters. Don't worry, we'll talk about them. But
We'll get
a significant secondary character, certainly throughout this series, is Mr. Bester. And we have some surprising alliances with Mr. Bester as he visits.
Yeah, Mr. Bester of all people. You, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, first he has the Dust storyline,
Right.
which I'm going to talk about that when we talk Shadows, because that's a lot of Jakar Londo.
Yeah.
But it's revealed that, because we've heard Dust since like The Gathering, since the TV pilot, there's been mention of this drug, and we find out A, what it does, and then B, that it was actually created by the Psi Corps.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Just a little more evil coming from the Psi Corps as those details are revealed. And yeah, as they kind of get into things with telepaths and whatnot, Bester starts playing a role. And I think the cliche phrase of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, that's Bester.
Mm-hmm. And I do like how they sort of find ways to neuter him every time they encounter him. So that they give him have them embody telepaths, then give him drugs and all that.
Well, you got to do something. You cannot trust this guy, and if you don't do something, he's going to do something to you. Mm-hmm. So you have to neuter the guy. You just do. You got to keep him in his place, and yet there are times when he is, dare I say it, kind of helpful. Mm-hmm. So, wow.
Yeah,
it adds kind of a different dimension to this character, and we learn a couple of other things that are semi-interesting about Bester, like the fact that we know that he's married and has a child back on Earth, but he also has another lady on the side who he really does love.
Right.
And
the old side chick.
Yeah, but you know what? Okay. That's totally cool. That's anyway, that kind of veers off into Shadow territory too. So,
well, a new secondary character, and you tell me, I'd have nothing against him, but in retrospect, I don't know how much he gives to this season. Brother Theo and his Merry Friars. I don't know what to call them.
I like that. That sounds like maybe sort of like a Renaissance, like a Ren Fair band.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and goodness knows there needs to be one. But what do you think Brother Theo and his Merry Friars brings? I mean, we certainly get the Gethsemane, I did not say that right, episode with Brother Edward.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, Lon Suitor, I mean... Yes.
Is there any time he's not playing a killer? Like, does he ever have non-killer roles?
From what I've seen of Brad Dourif's career, no. He just plays psychotic, crazy, murderous people. That's what he does. That's his career. But he's very good at it. So, hey.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so... Yeah, we start off the season where there's basically like these monks that want to live in down below. And when I started to watch this, I thought, why? What is your real motive here? What are you really doing? And we know by now that Babylon 5 plants these seeds. And, I feel like there was just enough payoff for a very minor character of this nature where by the time you get to And the Rock Cried Out No Hiding Place, you've got actually a pretty strong religious presence on Babylon 5, and under the guise of religious purity, they are giving information to Sheridan and company about what's happening on Earth, because the channels have now been cut off. They can't get intel from Earth, and so this is how they're doing it. I thought that's pretty decent, because that seems kind of real world-ish, you know? People aren't really going to question a religious leader too much.
Yeah, and because the use of faith leaders, you know, can be innocuous, right? Oh, you know, yes, they're going to go visit Babylon 5, but, you know, they're on a mission of whatever.
Yeah, they're on a mission of goodwill, or we're here to spread the word about Jesus, and that sort of a thing.
Yes.
But also, I mean, I love what is his name? The Reverend. Yeah, where he tells Sheridan, look, if I was going to be wrong about you guys, I was going to be wrong, but I couldn't just sit around and do nothing, because that's what the opposition wants. So, I feel like that's justified, you know? Like, I could see how some people would get angry with, you know, the religious people kind of going for maybe what they might consider less than pure intentions, and getting involved politically and all that. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know about you. Do you have any feelings about that? I mean, it makes sense for the story, but it also makes sense just from a realistic standpoint.
Yeah, and I think, you know, because they have a rabbi, I believe, in Amman. They have oh lordy, this is going to be my Western ignorance. They have a Eastern religion represented. I don't want to offend anyone, because I can't remember if it's Buddhist or whatever. Or no, I don't mean to say whatever, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
And I can't remember who the other religion is represented, so I apologize, listeners.
But it is a nice group. It's a mix.
Yes.
You know, it's not just any one thing. They are all working together, and that's actually really nice to see that in the future that's happening. Oh, yeah. Thank goodness.
Ecumenical efforts.
Yes.
But yeah, because religions, I know it's a broad brush, I know. But they all, to every extent, I think, have a call to action in how you live your personal life, how you relate to
do what's right, you know, morally.
Yes.
That's where it connects in my brain. Like, yes, this is exactly what they should be doing, and it's great that people aren't questioning it. Like President Clark, that sort of thing.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I think, and so, and I don't want to spoil, but you know, the role of the church, and I say that vaguely, the role of the church in Babylon 5 will become very interesting throughout the series, especially in the very, very far future. But anyway, so let's talk about some major characters. Yeah, let's do that for a crazy change of pace. I was gonna say, let's talk about your favorite character as always. What does Commander Ivanova have to do?
If I lived through this job without completely losing my mind, it would be a miracle of biblical proportions.
Well, you know, Ivanova is kind of not necessarily a heavily featured character with this season. I mean, she's certainly around and she's doing things, but there's not a whole lot of focus on her alone. She doesn't necessarily take much of a spotlight. She's much more just part of the ensemble doing her part. And I'd say one of the biggest things, though, is maybe once they do break away from Earth, she starts having horrible dreams where she's showing up to work naked, and it's, you know, she's losing a lot of sleep, and subconsciously she is maybe struggling a little bit with her identity. And she and Sheridan talk about this, where they've been career military their whole lives, and suddenly this is a big change. It's an upheaval for her consciousness, and so she is looking for more purpose. And so that's kind of a nice little tie-in with things that are happening with the Narns, and I'll just mention two words, Abrahamo Lincoln. She breaks out her photoshopping skills and does, I think, a fairly decent rendition of Sheridan as a Centauri. And so when we get to that aspect of things, that sort of helps her overcome this, where she does feel like she's doing more than just docking the ships and doing her daily routine, and can think less, I think, about all that is happening around her, because it is a little boggling, I would think. That is a lot of sudden, crazy change.
Right. I mean, you know, I think there's always a lot of unseen stuff. Of course, running Babylon 5 is always difficult, but of course, we mostly see, I mean, I think this is fair to say from what we've seen, that the first officer's role on Babylon 5 is to sort of manage resources. Well, guess what? There's now zero.
Right.
And ain't nothing coming in from Earth. So, I mean, you know, Susan has a lot on her plate with docking fees, dealing with the different alien transporting and making sure Babylon 5 is up and running and making money. I mean, this is a capitalistic world still.
And yet they don't reopen the Babylon 5 store.
I know.
I guess there's not too many tourists coming to Babylon 5, just a couple. And they go to down below because they're idiots. But anyway.
Right. They still get tourists, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, really,
then,
Ivanova's very much, I think, in the background this season where she's just holding it together while Sheridan is trying to work on bigger things. So she has a very important role, but it's not necessarily like we have to spell it out in front of the camera.
All right. Let's talk about someone who doesn't keep it together this season, and that is Dr. Stephen Franklin.
Yeah, the stims finally. We got to address this. This has been getting worse and worse, and finally, even he can no longer live in denial.
Yeah, and because it's interesting in the rebirth ceremony with Delenn, and this is, I don't know, I'm going to be off if you look at the numbers, but I will say it's a third of the way through the season when he tells Delenn, I think I have a problem.
Yeah.
And that's all he says. And that kind of lingers there for a couple episodes because we still kind of see it in the background. Even though he thinks he's admitted it, he really hasn't fully admitted it. And it doesn't really finally hit. And it kind of, with all these big events that are going out through the series, it's almost happens in passing when he kind of just, is confronted by Garibaldi. When Michael kind of witnesses a little loss of control on Stephen's part. And then Michael has to make this decision, am I going to go look through his files and do a drug test? And he's about to turn away and not do it. And Stephen sees him and says, why didn't you do it? And Mike's like, hey, if you have a problem, it's up to you, man. It's not my place. And then Stephen's like, well, I already did the test and I do have a problem. And then Stephen just resigns. And John doesn't know what the hell is going on when Stephen resigns.
Yeah.
And goes on walkabout.
Yeah. Now, do you think Sheridan was a little oblivious as to just how bad things were getting for Stephen? Because I think, with Garibaldi being a recovering alcoholic, he knows addiction when he sees it. He sees what he went through and then can see other people going through that kind of pain. But Sheridan, it strikes me that when Stephen resigns, he's just kind of floored, like, whoa. Okay, where'd this come from?
Right. Yeah. I think just Sheridan. It shows that when you're dealing with the big issues of Army of Light and Earth independence, you miss what's going on under your nose, the people, and being in contact with those people. And so I think he's sort of lost contact with everyone. A
little bit, yeah, except maybe with Delenn and Ivanova. Right. But yeah, I think Sheridan was just honestly. He just needs Stephen to keep doing his job so much that it never even occurred to him that maybe he wasn't doing so well. And so when Stephen finally comes to terms with this addiction, how bad it really is, Stephen finally, he kind of boils over, right? And he's just, I can't do this anymore. I have to walk away. I'm out. And I'm going on walkabout.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
And what'd you think of? We sort of got a few episodes. We got a whole episode in Walkabout, obviously named.
Yeah.
And then we got bits and pieces, and then sort of we got near the end there. But we have Stephen on Walkabout. Then we get him going through withdrawal. Mm-hmm. And then basically, we have him getting stabbed, and having to go through recovery. Yeah. So what did you sort of think of Stephen's journey? It was nice to probably not the most, in a season full of big war and revelations, an episode like Walkabout with, a singer, who's dying and, maybe not the most powerful story in the world, right? But it was a nice little enjoyable tale, I thought,
Oh, yeah. I thought it was pretty decent character development for Stephen, who honestly just does not get enough love through a lot of the series. I mean, he's just expected to be there in MedLab and do MedLab things and save his patients and all that. We know that he does a good job with that. That's great. So we need to get to know him, and it makes a lot of sense how this was framed, where he was running from himself. He doesn't know his identity outside of being a doctor, had to kind of figure that out. And I love it when he says, I am alive. Everything else is negotiable. I think after you have kind of come to terms with an addiction, that is ground zero for you. That is when you can start to rebuild, when you are just at that basic of a level. Then you can get back then you can get going again. Then you can start rebuilding. And then he's finally going to be able to be himself. Maybe for the very first time in a very long time.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just a sucker for these kind of stories, but I think it's well earned. I think when you have the episode when he finally meets himself, as it were, and he goes into he accuses himself of running away throughout his life, and not facing up and taking responsibility for actions, and for not fighting for what he wants, and who he is, and I just thought, and maybe people think it's a little overdone. I don't, but I enjoyed it thoroughly, and that he has to fight, literally struggle, bleeding profusely, and pull himself up inch by inch. Which, by the way, as an aside, JMS is a little repetitive in that. How many times do we get someone bleeding profusely coming out of the lift into the crowd? I think this is the third time we've had it in this show. But anyway, regardless.
Well, it makes for good dramatic content.
Yes. It does. But anyway, yes, and so I enjoyed Steven getting that revelation, and then eventually, I liked how, when he was recovery, he's in med lab, he's trying to take it all in, and then he sees all the casualties coming in, and he's like, you can see to himself, hey, I have a purpose. There's something I'm supposed to be doing, and he's in his wheelchair, but he still just takes control of Med Lab,
right?
Even though it's unofficial, and then eventually gets the job back from Sharon.
Right? Yeah, we know that he is back. I love the fact also that this course of addiction happened over a really long time. We saw it begin in season 2, and it's not like they took 3 episodes and resolved it, which is more than what a lot of other shows would even give it. No, it gradually became worse and worse and worse until he finally had to confront it almost at the end of season 3. That was great because this sort of thing does not happen overnight. It is a process, so I really appreciated how that was handled.
Yes. And I think more or less that was it there was obviously lots more, but that's, I think, more or less we're going to cover with the Earth conflict. I want you to give your moment of Delenn's badassery of when the Earth forces, I love that. That's because it's been a while having seen this, and so you see the Babylon 5 forces, you see the President Clark's Earth Alliance forces, the breakaway, you get this big battle. It's a hair's breadth, but we've won. Yay, we won. And then suddenly 3 Earth cruisers come in, and you're like, oh no, we're screwed.
Right.
What's gonna happen?
They had just barely gotten through this wave, and now comes another. Oh, they are so very screwed until 4 more jump gates open, and Delenn comes to the rescue with her badass "be somewhere else" speech. Yeah. I love her for that almost as much as Sheridan.
Yes. I forget the exact line, but yes, the only human that has ever defeated the Minbari is behind me. You are in front of me.
Yeah, that's right. And if you value lives, you get out of here. And they do, because they're halfway smart. So good for them. They live another day.
Yeah, and then one last thing. Speaking of the Minbari, of course, the Minbari are protecting Babylon 5 because someone needs to.
Yes.
And then what has to happen is a redefinition of Babylon 5 because, it's the place for aliens to come and work themselves peacefully. And that's not worked. Okay.
Right.
So why are we here? What's the purpose of the Babylon Council anymore? And we have the new Babylon Treaty, which is proposed to the non-aligned worlds, and that sort of creates a new purpose for protecting Babylon 5 through making it a place of commerce and diplomacy, as was said in season 1, and still keeping the business going.
Right. Just under a slight paradigm shift. Yeah, it changes, but it doesn't change that much, but it's just sort of reworking it so that it does still work for everybody, and everybody eventually falls in line and gets on board. And then that sort of kind of coincides with what else is happening in this season, and that is, of course, we're starting to see the Shadows take some action. Another war.
Right, so with the Shadow...
Because we couldn't have just one.
Another one. Exactly.
So, yeah.
So a brief synopsis of what...
Do it.
Yeah, brief synopsis of what we see for the Shadow War is, of course, Morden and the Force... basically a lot of the alien races are already at war with themselves, with the Centauri sort of causing the most war. Of course, they've taken over Narn. Yeah. They're being aggressive to the other races. But then we see this season that the races are starting to fight among themselves with territory and disputed things and this chaos keeps going on. And what we have is that the shadows, after this keeps going on for a while, start operating in the open. Mm-hmm. And the war room gets going with the Army of Light. And the question that's perplexing Sheridan and company and Delenn and everyone else and is what is the shadow strategy? Because they're openly attacking, they're going left and right. You have Sheridan having to shake up Kosh and the Vorlons to do something because these people or the non-aligned worlds don't want to cooperate because hey, they haven't attacked me yet. I'm good. We talked about that with the Earth folks, right? But now the aliens are showing the same thing, and so Sheridan has to kind of get them working together, has to get the Vorlons out there and doing something, and when the shadows come out openly attacking, he has to figure out what the shadow strategy is. And through all that, you have Delenn taking control of the Rangers, you have the sort of Babylon 4 story and Sinclair and all that sort of to the side.
Right,
that's, taking place because that's the Shadow War of 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, as if we need to deal with another time period on top of another war and another war, because sure, why not? Let's do that. But it does resolve Sinclair's story arc, and we kind of figure out what his destiny was this whole time, so it's cool. But in terms of the shadows, in terms of the non-aligned worlds, like kind of not wanting to fight, yes, it is because they've not been attacked yet, but for when the shadows do start openly attacking people, these worlds are getting their butts whipped, too. I mean, they don't have a prayer. So you're not going to approach them unless approached first, because that's just suicide. And I love that Sheridan finally has to get the Vorlons involved. I mean, up to this point, the Vorlons are mysterious. We're sort of led to believe that they are the good guys. They're full of wisdom, and
right.
they're not quite a Deus Ex Machina, but we know that they are very powerful. And so if there was ever a time, okay, we need your help. And Kosh is not exactly willing at first. I mean, he kind of knocks Sheridan around, disobedience, up yours. And Sheridan has to stand up to him and make him take action at a price, which we'll get to. But he finally does convince them because they desperately need a victory once the shadows do start attacking openly.
Right, and after that, it's after they figure out what the shadows' plans are, then we have discovering the telepath story and the telepath weakness to the shadows, and so
that's a
Sheridan
big
and Delenn
thing.
and company start using that as a weapon and have some open confrontations with the shadows, and then they have finally the final battle, quote unquote, at least of the season, or the final big battle, I should say,
yes.
Of the season. And then finally, when the shadows are more or less defeated, though it may be a Pyrrhic victory of sorts, that's when
they won this battle, not the war.
Yeah, so basically that's when you have a reaction from the shadows at Zachadum, who send out a messenger of their own to Babylon 5 to bring Sheridan to Zachadum, where Sheridan kind of gets the whole story about the orders of chaos, or order versus chaos, and what happens then.
Well, I think before we get into too much detail about that, there's so many other things that we've got to talk about. I want to save that for the end, just because it is our cliffhanger.
Sure.
In terms of other aspects of the shadows, you mentioned the telepaths. So much development here. Mm-hmm. We mentioned the dust already that the Psychor developed, and we are learning also that telepaths do have kind of, I don't know, powers against the shadows to block them or what have you. But also there's a little thing about the Vorlons and telepaths, and especially with Lita. Because she's now working with Kosh.
So I think we can first attack this under sort of Kosh Lita.
Let's do that.
Kosh, you mentioned him. So we have that great episode and scene with Sheridan, confronting Kosh and telling him, "Hey, you put me in charge. I'm telling you, you need to attack the shadows. Put your money where your mouth is." Kosh acquiesces, and you have that scene where the Vorlon fleet comes out and attacks the shadows and sort of, yay, we finally won. The shadows can be defeated, and it gives the non-aligned worlds, hey, I guess we could sign on. But then of course you have that part with Morden and his associates going into Kosh's quarters, and that dream sequence with John and his father is just so great. I think one of my favorite scenes, just because of how Kosh reveals himself, literally and figuratively, I suppose, to John, and as a father figure, as Kosh often reveals himself, and just says, hey, I was afraid, you were right, it's your job now, don't worry about me, and then we have the death of Kosh.
Yeah, Kosh dies. Never would have thought that was going to come, right? But it does happen. I do like the scene as well, where Kosh presents as Sheridan's father. I think the Vorlons in general, we've been the story's been framing it as if the Vorlons are kind of, like parental figures in a way. So that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Now the one...
And then Lita.
Oh, yeah, and Lita.
Has become Kosh's attaché. Every ambassador gets an attaché, and so now Lita's serving as the Vorlons.
Yeah, which is a nice little tie-in from when, from the Gathering, where she's one of the very few people to see a Vorlon out of the suit, and it turns out that they've done some work with her, on her, to make her a little more capable of working with Vorlons for Vorlon things.
And it's interesting because with Lita, because she's not Psy-Corps anymore, obviously, or certainly. And so she's sort of like a telepath unleashed because, there's a lot of things where Talia could never do because, Psy-Corps regulations, but hey, read this person's mind. That's cool. I'll do it. That's fine. Yeah. Hey, go with us. And, so you sort of get the full telepath power unleashed on behalf of Babylon 5.
Right. And so once it's kind of revealed, too, that not only do telepaths sort of help protect against the shadows, but the fact that she's been manipulated by the Vorlons, that's a little bit of a nice weapon to have on your side. So Lita gets called to do quite a few things here and there.
Weapons supplies.
That's right. That's right. So, and speaking of which, let's return back to when we were talking about Bester and his girl on the side, Carolyn. Turns out that telepaths have been connecting on shadow ships and whatnot for a little while now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's sort of also revealed that Vorlons may have created telepaths.
That big revelation.
Because the shadows...
Yes.
Yes. So the shadows need, for whatever reason, people, I guess, to pilot their ships, or at least to interface with their ships.
Yeah, a brain, I guess, telepaths. Is what they need.
Yeah. They've decided to start using telepaths, and that shipment gets intercepted by Bester and Sheridan, and it's revealed to be telepaths, and the one that Bester knows. And so it's kind of revealed that the Vorlons maybe have started, maybe genetically created telepaths in all these species, so that the next time the war came, that they would have a pool of telepaths to help jam the shadow vessels, and that maybe it was the shadows who killed or destroyed all of the mind walkers in the Narnia world.
Right, yeah, because we got to take even a step further back and talk about with Garibaldi reading the Book of Jaquan that Jakar lent him while Jakar was incarcerated. And that's when he finds out that telepaths were a thing in the Shadow War of 1,000 years ago, and maybe this is a line of defense we can use now, because apparently the Shadows didn't learn to make defenses over 1,000 years or something. But okay.
But it was kind of cool when whether it's Lita in that first mission that she takes on, or when you have the subsequent Minbari and human telepaths, or various races, sort of jam the shadow vessel, and it kind of just like wobbles a little bit, and you just shoot the heck out of it and call it a day.
Another thing I like about Lita is Pat Tallman was so fantastic about the way she handled it. Is you can tell when Lita is doing something telepathic and it's not corny looking, because she just gives you that little intense look, just and something's going on. It's just subtle and actionable enough. It's that perfect balance where it's not, you're not laughing at it. It's serious, but something's happening, because you could just have nothing. It's in the mind, right? But no, she actually made it. She gave it a little bit of physicality, which I think is great for us as an audience.
Right. And it does make sense, the rule, at least for human telepaths, but maybe all of them, that you have to have visual, connection before you can
maybe
telepath that.
I hadn't thought about that because, from what we see of Minbari telepaths at this point, I don't think they're more meditating than anything. They're focusing their mind, which I think is a very Minbari thing to do. So maybe from the human standpoint, the physical look, the eye contact or something is what we needed. I like that a lot. Very cool.
Yeah. So let's talk a little Minbari Ranger action here. So this kind of, I'm going to skip ahead, play with the timeline. So basically, this happens later, but Delynn becomes leader of the Rangers following Ranger 1's disappearance.
Right. Which was Sinclair, in case you don't remember.
Exactly. Valen, if you prefer.
Right.
But we have that whole so she's now, because I guess she and Sheridan were in command of the Rangers on Babylon 5. They were co-leaders, but now Dylan is actually now head of the entire Rangers.
Yes, until Za.
And then you have that very with Nerun and Marcus, and that whole conflict of, because Nerun, we discovered, is part of the Grey Council, and that the warrior caste had now has unfair representation. They are gerrymandered in the Grey Council,
right? As a result of Delynn being kicked off of the Grey Council. So now there's the imbalance for the first time in, pretty much ever for the Grey Council, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which, hey, that's not cool. And Nerun is very much, I would say, a Klingon warrior version of Minbari. he's so warrior caste, that's all he is. Right.
And we have Delynn breaking the Grey Council.
Yes.
So
Delynn does some pretty big things in this season. But going back to Nerun for just a moment, I love the fact that he calls out Delynn for heading the Rangers. He thinks that a military leader needs to take command of the Rangers. And what is a religious caste member doing as a head of a fighting operation? That makes no sense. And in a linear fashion, yes, that makes some sense. But also, I kind of like the idea also of a person who maybe doesn't have such a focus on fight, win, is in charge, maybe to add a little bit of balance. Now, what do you think about that, especially as someone who is ex-military? What would you think if somebody who was not a military leader traditionally for career telling you what to do?
Right. Well, and that's, of course, what we have, at least in the American system, because we have civilian control. We have President and Secretary of Defense, And so, but, when you think about it, it, of course, is very odd to have the member of the religious caste be in charge of the Rangers. I mean, yes, the Rangers aren't just the military, because there's a Minbari, for lack of a better word, army. I'm sure that's not what they call them. But anyway, you have warriors. You have the Minbari warriors,
right.
For lack of a better word. And so the Rangers are different, because for one thing, they're not all Minbari. They're also human.
Yeah, and they're not just fighting. They're gathering intelligence. They're I don't know. They're in
special operations.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Sort of the Rangers, or your Delta, or your SEALs, or whatever you want to call them, of the greater war. But of course, then you have, and so, but yeah. So to answer your question, I think it is unusual. It doesn't, because does Delynn have tactical training? Does she know where to send the Rangers? No. Well, she does, because that's what they wrote for her.
I think she does, but she's not an expert. I think you have to have a certain amount of training to even to be considered for a position of that stature. But is she maybe she maybe not have the finesse that Nerun does?
Right. Well, because think about it. Ranger 1, of course, was Sinclair, who was a military man.
Right.
And so it's, even though it's weird for a human, but they're half human, so whatever.
Yeah, they can accept it at least. He's qualified.
And so, so it makes sense for him too. So Delynn, does it really make sense? Probably not.
It does, but it doesn't. They actually try to address this in the story, where Delynn says, maybe it's a logical choice in some sense, but it might not be the most popular choice.
Right.
And so even she is a little flabbergasted that she's been chosen. But you know what I do in my headcanon is Sinclair nominated her, and they're going to abide by his wishes. Now, that's not actually in the story, but that's what I feel happened.
Well, I mean, can you really ever understand anything said by Ranger 1? I mean, you have to really stand on your head and look through a mirror.
And even then, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, and speaking of Rangers, we have a regular Ranger presence on Babylon 5 as of this season in Marcus. And we learn a lot more about what the Rangers kind of do, because we sort of saw them on the station in season 2, but we just kind of knew, okay, they're a presence, they're an ally, they're out there to help us whenever there's trouble. But we kind of see, I don't know, maybe more of the legwork that the Rangers do with things like lurking around and down below and making friends with less than savory people and getting intel that way, which is a lot of what Marcus does.
And we see, his office is basically that bar.
Yeah, yes, it is.
And so, we get a lot of Delin and Marcus on the White Star stories.
We do.
First, when they go out, well, I don't know if this is in order, but one is when they go out in search of the first ones.
Oh, you mean Ivanova and Marcus?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
yes,
Ivanova
these two
and
do
Marcus.
become a team, and I blame the flowers.
Well, we get the Zog. Zog, yes.
Zog, no.
Zog, no. What is Zog?
I love that. Yeah, no, but they do make a very good team. Now, do you ship them? Mm-hmm. That's the big question.
This is hard because
it is.
I mean, and maybe because I guess no is I mean, but I think about it this way: Marcus obviously likes her. Does she like Marcus? And I don't know, because you can't force a character. Well, I mean, shipping you can, but I mean, I don't know. You can't force a character to like another one, so I don't know. Do you think they go together? Like, Marcus is awesome. Hey, I'm not going to deny Marcus isn't awesome. But do you think he and Susan really work together?
You know what? I think their relationship works twofold. I mean, there's no question that Marcus is pretty quickly enamored with Ivanova. He makes that pretty prevalent with conversations
gets her bacon and eggs,
right? Yeah, I mean, conversations that he has with Franklin as well as Lanier about that. I mean, it's pretty clear what his intentions are. Now, for her, though, that's where the complication sets in. Professionally, they have a great working relationship. And she's going to be friendly and good with him. But personally, Ivanova is not looking for a relationship right now. She has her hands so full, it's not even crossing her mind. So it's not just Marcus, in my opinion. It's anybody, especially she's still probably getting over Talia a little bit and is just not seeking it. It's not occurring to her. And so even when he flirts with her a little bit, she is just, no, get out of here. Now, Franklin says something interesting, though, where he says to Marcus, she is so not your type that you're practically in different galaxies. Do you think that's true?
Susan is a complex character in a good way, because as we talked about last episode we did about this, she has her I'm on duty side and she has her hair down, I'm relaxed side.
Yeah.
And I think there is an arc in this season with her and Marcus that first she likes him, then she doesn't, and Marcus is like, what's that all about? And Steven explains, hey, you're new. We just thought you're going to be around for a second, but now you're permanently here. She takes a while to trust people. And I think, when he brings in the chain of command, things I cut out for my magazine and put it on poster board sign.
Don't you love that?
She thinks that's sweet.
It made her laugh.
She appreciates that.
His work was done. Yeah. It's super cute. And one thing I really do like about Marcus is when he's all business, he is in business mode. He knows how to take care of things. He has a sharp focus. Mm-hmm. But really, the rest of the time, Marcus is enjoying life and not taking anything that seriously at all. He knows how to have a good time.
Mm-hmm. And I think Susan does too, but I do think they are different types. I don't know. I'm going to say that for now.
Yeah, for now. I mean, it's really hard looking at just this part of the story, knowing in hindsight what happens. So, yeah. But another thing that I think maybe not makes them incompatible, but makes things more difficult in terms of relating to one another is, this just occurred to me. We were talking earlier about how Ivanova was feeling a little chaotic subconsciously. Well, Marcus is, I mean, she says to him at one point, he's a loose cannon. She doesn't know how to relate to him. She doesn't really know what his role is in all of this. And so that's just adding, I think, more trouble to her life. And she wants to push that away. She's got enough. Which is why I think she kind of grows a little cold with Marcus, along with the trust thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, we've gone this far and not talked Londo and Jakar.
Well, we better fix
and
that.
Everyone else. Yeah. So first, I want to talk Londo.
Let's
but
do that.
before I talk Londo, I want to talk Veer, because of people who, know Babylon 5, may or may not know, but Stephen Furst, the actor who played Veer, died very recently.
Yeah.
Just
like
this month.
Yeah, maybe
in
a couple
fact.
of weeks ago, as of when this episode comes out. Very recent.
Yes,
So,
and so
that's
that was
sad.
certainly, yes. I mean, still, relatively, early death, complications from diabetes, I'm told, and he had always had weight issues. I mean, and we can see it in Babylon 5. First season Veers, and we know from Flounder and in the early movies and all that, but he sort of slims down throughout the series, as you see. But
Right.
that the diabetes issue was always apparently with him.
Yeah. Well, do you
so
know the
obviously
story, Philip, about the kidney transplant and whatnot that happened? Okay, this is a real thing. I think it might be on Lurker's Guide. I'm not sure. It probably is. But apparently, it probably had to do with diabetes. But Stephen Furst had to have someone donate a kidney to him because his were failing during the course of Babylon 5, which was, I think, in part of why they had Veer go to Minbar so that he could get this taken care of.
Oh.
A Babylon 5 fan found out about this and donated a kidney to Stephen Furst.
Wow.
How cool is that?
That's
That is why the sci-fi community is the best.
It is. And I actually got to meet Stephen at a convention, and I have to dig, but I had a picture with my dad with Stephen, so I'll have to find that out somewhere.
Oh, cool.
Because I believe I had him do the Veer wave.
Oh,
in
nice.
the photo.
Now, when did that happen?
Yes. Oh, it would probably have been like 2000, 2001, something like that.
Oh, very cool,
So-
very cool. I regret not being able to see him at a convention. There's just so many of them that are gone now.
Sure.
Anyway,
so the
Veer.
Yeah, the quick. Yeah, he as you say, he gets in the assignment to Minbar, pushed away by Londo, but he goes to Minbar and apparently is successful despite Londo editing his reports, and he gets some prominence back at the royal court. His name is starting to be mentioned. In fact, he gets so highly valued, he gets a wife.
Apparently so, yes. It is an arranged marriage with Lindesty. And she is far, far too good for him.
The lovely but rather deadly Lindesty.
So it seems. Yes. Now, this character, sometimes I just really want to grind my teeth while I watch her because it's not bad acting. I think it's very intentional the way Lindesty is portrayed. She says such horrible, evil things with such a cheery voice. Oh,
Yes.
creeps me out.
Yes, we need to help thin out their herds. They're just Narns. They need our help.
It's not even that they feel pain. It's not like they're aware. Yeah, just, what a horrible, horrible person.
Yes.
And it's great because at first you think, oh, this is such a cute little courtship and all that. And no, it turns out that Veer, he really deserves better, in my opinion. Veer is such a beautiful,
Yes.
pure guy, and he really does want to love her. But you know what? I can't get past it, and neither should he, especially in light of what he's been doing on Minbar.
Right. It's never clear to me, other than the story we made up by ourselves in Punch It.
Right,
That,
go see that episode.
Why he gets involved with the Narn, other than, we know Veers has a good heart, but how he literally gets, but more or less, long story short, he starts a Narn underground of getting Narn shipped to labor camps, but not really, because they end up disappearing. People think, oh, they died, no big deal, and what it is they're being sent back to places of safety and
Right.
and ensuring they're taken away from the war zone.
Yeah, I feel like Veer has such a conscience that he had to do
Mm-hmm.
something, and once he was on Minbar, he realized he was in a position to actually do something, and it took a while for him to get caught, so he was right. And
Right.
so, yeah, I really love this about Veer. The fact that he does have a conscience. He has a big heart. And he will do so at his own expense even. I mean, he had to have known at some point this would get found out. And that he would have to face the wrath of Londo. And ultimately, his position with being the Minbari ambassador, or the ambassador to Minbar, gets taken away as a result. So, I mean, he does pay a price, but it's more like a slap on the wrist, I guess.
Right. And the part about his wife being sent away, though I guess technically he's still married, that's not really answered per se.
Well, yes and no. I mean, did they actually get married? I think they were going to put it off.
Well, yeah, because they were saying the ceremony doesn't even matter, that it's just whatever, that, because she was like, hey, we're married. But I'm just so sad he never got to 8.
To 8? I thought there were only 6.
Oh, is it 6? I couldn't remember.
6.
Because, 1 is like,
Yeah.
2.
Well, I think he gets to 6 a little bit later in the
that's
future.
good.
He'll get there. He's going to be a late bloomer, and that's fine.
Sure. So let's talk I guess maybe, I almost said favorite character, and I guess favorite storyline. I don't know. Maybe I should say favorite character, but Londo. Mm-hmm. We have him at the beginning, I'm done with the shadows. I see the price that I'm going to have to pay, and it's not worth it.
Right.
And then we have Lord Rifa taking up with Mr. Molden, and then Londo decides that can't happen because he just sees that's just going to be the same. That the Centauri people are going to be trapped by his associates. That there's too high a price, and so he basically poisons Lord Rifa, and says, "Hey, I will give you the second poison, and you'll die unless you tell Morden to
buzz off.
F off." Yeah, and so
Yeah, it's not going to be that simple for Londo. He thinks that if he just tells Morden and his associates to go away, that maybe eventually this will all fade off and Londo can be Londo again. But it's far too late for that, and the closer Londo gets to power, the less he wants it, which is a great reversal from the Londo we see in the very beginning, who wants nothing but power. And now he's very afraid because he knows he's so damned.
And we get the former emperor's wife. Played
yes.
very memorably by Majel Barrett Roddenberry.
Yeah, Lady Morella.
Yes, and she gives him some warnings that he will have some opportunities to perhaps go away from his dark path, and he will become emperor, and Veer will become emperor.
Right, but only
So good luck
after
with that,
one of
guys.
them
Bye, I'm out of
dies.
here.
Yeah.
Lady out.
Yeah, you wanted a reading, you got a reading.
Right, and so we get Londo, washing his hands. Morden and the shadows are gone, and so Mr. Morden has to figure out how to get back in with the Centauri, because the shadows need the Centauri. They need someone a race they can control to help foment the chaos.
Yes.
And so he kills Londo's love.
Yeah,
and
Adira.
blames Lord Rifa for it.
Yeah. You knew this was going to happen, right? Because Londo is just so stoked. I mean, we're kind of seeing the shades of old Londo where he's just drunk off of excitement, much less bravare.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got the star laces. He's got everything set up. And then she's out on a stretcher.
Yeah.
Ouch.
And then Londo asks for Morden to come back and to be a part of that again.
Yeah,
And
he kind of knows he's got to do some dirty work here.
And I mean, sort of the skip forward to the end of the season, we sort of have the competition between the houses of Malari and Rifa. Mm-hmm. Who will be in dominance, who will be able to take the favor of the royal court, because Rifa sort of has the emperor in his corner because he helped put him into power because he killed the prime minister.
Right.
And
that whole thing.
Londo has some power and some influence and some money and the shadows on his side. And so, of course, we get in a very memorable death scene in The Rock Cried Out of Londo's conspiracy with Jakar, with Veer unknowingly, and the Narn to get rid of Lord Rifa off the playing board.
To the backdrop of gospel music. You gotta love it.
Yes, exactly.
And how can you not dance while that's happening, and yet some guy's getting killed? That's just the greatest kind of dichotomy. That is why that episode, I think, is just the perfect thing. You've got this great kind of conspiracy. All of our big players are just hitting home runs. Then you've got Sheridan and Delenn. There's the reveal of the White Star Fleet. There's finally the kiss. I mean, for me, that is the apex of Babylon 5. That episode is perfect.
And then with the revelations in the future in World Without End, part 1 and 2, we do see Londo's end. We see completely Londo's end. We see him emperor of a bruised and battered Centauri Prime that friends and associates of the Shadows have destroyed, basically, or at least put on fire, burned Centauri Prime, that he is emperor of a burned world, and we also find out that he is under the control of some sort of alien, some sort of keeper, that he can only control through drink, and thank goodness for that. He I don't know what the analogy is there, but
meaning Londo likes to drink, and he can at least control this thing a little bit through something he enjoys doing. Gives him some joy in life.
And so he deals with Delenn, and not that he knows past Sheridan, but he thinks it's present, future Sheridan for him.
Right.
Future perfect conditional. I forget. But anyway,
so confusing.
Exactly. But we see at the end that he has called his old friend Jakar, the one-eyed Jakar apparently, who is also old, and they to kill him. And then as Jakar strangles him, as we always saw was going to happen in the dream, Londo's keeper alien awakes, and he fights back, and they apparently kill each other.
Right.
And then from the Emperor's emblem, behind the curtains walks Veer, who picks up the Emperor's emblem, and that's all we see.
Yeah. Now we've kind of seen little bits and pieces of this. It's been alluded to since the very beginning, where there's that flash in the gathering of the two strangling one another, and now we see it happen. I was a little surprised at first when I very first watched this that we actually got that, because you think that would be something you'd save for the end, but I kind of like the way it happened.
Yeah, I saw JMS, people were kind of critiquing him for that on Lurker's Guide. I was reading the comments, and he's like, hey, I didn't tell you how he gets there.
It's true.
Because you sort of also know, I guess, through the future that, the Shadows are defeated, so we know the storyline, right? But we don't know how or why or what. And he says, even though you don't know how you got there. Just like throughout this entire 3 seasons, we've seen glimpses. We saw the future of Delenn, holding the snow globe and dropping it, but we don't know what the context was, and now we know in Zahadum what the context was, and we learned those future glimpses of both Sinclair and Garibaldi seeing the Shadows attacking and Babylon 5 exploding were a possible future if before wasn't put in place correctly.
Right.
And so we don't know, and the whole Kosh dream from the last season that Sheridan had about the Raven and the Psi Corps and all that.
Right.
And so,
you are the hand.
Again,
what kind of a dopey line is that?
Exactly. So, but all these things are just coming to fruition. So we have Londo, again, back consolidating his power, and that he has been promoted and is being sent to be an advisor to the royal court. And
That's
so
right.
we will see what happens to Londo as he now goes to the royal court in Centauri Prime.
That's right. Well, now that we've talked about the Centauri side, we got to talk about the Narn.
Yeah, Jakar. So tell me about Jakar's revelation, his dust episode, revelation, prison, and recovery, I guess.
Jakar essentially turns into the Jakar that you ultimately grow to love and remember throughout this season. We go from we've seen angry Narn Jakar, or we have seen angry Jakar quite a bit and off and on throughout the series up to this point, and then he has his prison sentence for assaulting Londo, and uses that time essentially to.
I was just going to say, during the Dust episode, we get some crazy psychedelic visuals there.
As you do.
He assaults Veer and he assaults Londo and all that.
Right.
And also, I mean, briefly, because going back to the beginning of the season, but I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the first episode I remember from Babylon 5 is from this season, because I remember, this is in the beginning, the elevator scene.
Yeah. Oh, this is a completely different thing, but we got to talk about this because it's one of the best scenes of the whole series, not just the season, the series. Because a little bit of background with the whole, for every Centauri that is killed, 500 Narns get killed, and that's sort of a thing. So when G'Kar and Londo are trapped in that lift together, G'Kar's not going to kill Londo. He doesn't have to, and he finds this most amusing.
Nobody's here.
Yeah,
just
I hear you. And I'm just laughing right along with him because Londo just keeps getting angrier and angrier. You haven't called for help. You're not going to call for help, even though this puts your life in danger too. Are you crazy? Mm-hmm. Maybe a little. But it's kind of sweet revenge for G'Kar. I can see why. He's just sitting there laughing. What a way to go. But of course, they live on.
But we see that angry... Well, I wouldn't say angry, but that vengeful G'Kar, that resigned, that's a good word, resigned G'Kar. Everything's been taken away from him. He has nothing. He can't even kill Londo because that'll mean death of all of his people. But if he just sits here and dies, then that's one bit of revenge and he can live. But we see a different G'Kar. We see, as he goes through the dust, I'm going to call it the dust stream, but basically when Kosh, again appearing as a father figure to G'Kar, ask him why. What do you get from all this? Why are you doing this? There's nothing that can happen. Sacrifice is what is called for during these times when you feel you have nothing left to give. You still can give something, and that launches G'Kar on his new outlook and revelation. Yeah,
he spends a lot of time spending his prison sentence writing, basically outlining, I think, what he has learned and changes. He undergoes a massive transformation just in mentality while he's incarcerated, and it's the best freaking thing for him. He takes that sentence willingly, I think, knowing that that is exactly what he needs. Because he really does have nothing at this point, but he picks up from the bootstraps and then realizes, I have a lot I can do here. And he figures out what that is, and he completely changes how he works as a person, as a leader, and starts to give rather than take.
And we see a lot of speed bumps because he comes away or out of prison with a new outlook, with a new mission, and he's not quite sure how to do it, but he knows the spirit in which he wants to do it in. That's when he starts to think of the Narn for security. What's the place for the Narn who've been I'm sure they wouldn't say they're conquered, but you know what I mean when I say that. A conquered race, what do they have to give? And they have to give whatever they can to fight for this cause, for this great war that's happening, and to be security members, to do whatever they can, to use their... you have that great confrontation with the one the one Narn warship left that could go help Sheridan. And Garibaldi's, that's when he throws the Book of Jaquan basically at his face and says, look, what you give me this stupid book for? You have someone out there who's been sacrificed for you, and you're not going to get at that warship. You're in control, G'Kar. You're the one who tells these people what to do. You're the leader. You need to step up and be a leader. And that's sort of when G'Kar, once again steps up and orders his captain to go help Sheridan out.
Right. Yeah, I think sacrifice is the big key word for Narns here, because they really have been sacrificed a lot up to this point. So the strange irony of it is the only way that they can really rise back up is to sacrifice even more, give more of themselves, because it's all that they have, but a lot more, the good comes out of it by sacrificing for the right reasons, for the right people. Bam.
And last episode, we talked about one of the final scenes of G'Kar when Londo orders him out of the council chamber. Yeah. We get a similar scene this season when Delenn has to admit to G'Kar everything they've kept from him about the shadows, about
so heartbreaking.
They knew what was going to happen to his home world, but they couldn't stop it, and how G'Kar It's in one way understanding, in one way never forgiving, and he has to do that at the same time.
Yeah, we actually see that in action. That's a really tough scene, so superbly acted by Andreas and Mira. But, I'm really glad that had to come out, for one thing, because now there is kind of total truth. There's not a whole lot back, and in a way, that is, I think once that's done, G'Kar is sort of let back in because of the way he handles that revelation. It's not angry G'Kar anymore who wants vengeance upon everybody for doing him wrong. It's, I want to help. And eventually he gets to go into the war room, and he's back in. He's in the inner circle.
And I know we've been talking a while, but there are two things left, and so I'm going to have to give short shrift to one, unfortunately. We could do a whole episode about this, but we're going to have to just talk quickly, and then we're going to talk Zahadu. So what I want to give short shrift to, but of course we can't not mention, is Jeffrey Sinclair.
Yes.
And the world without end, that's what it's called, right? Parts
War
1
Without
and 2.
End.
Or Without End, excuse me, parts 1 and 2 with we finally get the sequel, the explanation of Babylon Squared all the way back in season 1, which again, the first time I saw this episode blew my ever blanking mind that they,
right?
I mean, is it 100% seamless? No, but it's 95% seamless with an episode they did 2 years ago with, forward flashes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this TV show.
I know, right? This is something they did not necessarily have to do. You could have had B4 just be the strange, weird enigma of a mystery with Babylon Squared, and that could have been the one-off weird time travel thing. But no, we're going to do that up. We're going to blow it up tenfold, and we're going to do it in 2 episodes. And we're going to resolve the story arc of the commander from the first season who just sort of mysteriously disappeared. Not only do we learn what he's been up to this whole time, commanding the Rangers and all that and spending time on Minbar, but now we have this whole thing where we've got to take the White Star to Babylon 4 back in time so that he can take Babylon 4 1,000 years ago and use the Triluminary and become Valen because he's a Minbari, not born of Minbari. Holy God. Oh my God, we know who Minbar Jesus is. And it's Sinclair, and that's his destiny. Holy woe.
Now I have to wonder, because we never really see this, how does Delenn react to all this? I mean, if you learn, I don't think the power is taken away. However, it's a bit of a cheat that your prophet, if you want to use that word, you can say Minbar Jesus, but if your prophet is a time traveler, does that take anything away? So in other words, Delenn has spent most of her life to fulfill prophecy. The prophecy was that there would be another great war with the shadows. There was a prophecy that the humans would be the key. There was a prophecy that the Great Council would be broken, disbanded, and that the time would be called, that they would have to fight the next great war, and et cetera, et cetera. It's because that's what Sinclair has seen throughout his life. So when he went back 1,000 years in the future, said, by B-dubs, hey, I got an idea of how to do the Great Council. Just came to me.
Right.
It's a self-fulfilling circular temporal, logic. He knew what happened because he was there, and so when he went back in time to make it happen, and then it happened, and then he saw it happen, and and so et cetera, et cetera.
It's that great conundrum of time travel, the paradox. Yes. I mean, to bring a little bit of Star Trek into this, A leads to B, leads to C, leads to A. It's all circular, and as long as it all happens, it will always happen. It continued to happen, and it's done, as it should be. So
Valen, or Sinclair becomes Valen. He becomes half the Minbari, and that's certainly it takes the place in Minbari culture. And so I just wondered with Delenn, Valen is her friend, Sinclair. And
well,
wonder
right.
how she deals with that.
Well, yeah, you think it might be more of a shock, and I think the biggest shock we got out of it was from Marcus when he puts it together. I mean, you would think Delenn would be more surprised, but we don't know all that Delenn knows. And we don't know all that she gets revealed to from the Great Machine. She gives little bits, I think, when she explains the mission to Sheridan and Ivanova and Marcus and all that. But maybe there was even more there that maybe she had some time to absorb it and accept it. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I just think of the dinner ceremony of Valen coming again. Well, I mean, you know he's not going to. It's Sinclair. It's
right.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I think
it's just
this was new information because she said she got some bits from the Great Machine right before they went on the mission. So this is certainly not something she always knew. But like now, going forward, I mean, do you set aside a piece of Flarn for Valen in his honor? With the changed meaning, does that make it more relevant or less relevant? Because most of us don't get to meet our gods if we worship them. And so, that wasn't really explored, but I guess it sort of just sits there as it is.
Yeah. So, and I just want to say I'm glad they wrapped Sinclair up. I mean, we talked about the problems Michael O'Hare had. So, I mean, he did 2 solid episodes in this season.
Yeah.
I mean, he was there. He did his job. And,
he did, and it's nice to see also that little bit of camaraderie between Sheridan and Sinclair, knowing, hey, they approve of one another. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I've heard nice things about you. You've heard nice things about me. That's great. Yay. And they go off on their adventure, and they give closure.
Lucy and Ethel. Well, it's like they are one, like they are the one.
Right. I mean, I would love to do just a whole episode on Zathras, but we should refrain. So why don't we jump now into the very last thing that we have to talk about, and that is, of course, the last episode of season 3, epic freaking cliffhanger. Zahadum.
Yes, we get the full, Anna Sheridan shows up.
John's wife. Which makes you wonder, okay, real life, Melissa Gilbert was Bruce Boxleitner's wife at the time, but who is the other woman on this show at this point? I just want to throw that out there. Send your feedback to...
What do you mean? They showed the video. It was Melissa Gilbert, the one they showed in the past show. What other woman are you talking about? That's been her the entire time.
No, I mean, is Anna the other woman, or is Delenn the other woman?
Oh, that's true. I see.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting
at. But we have that interesting confrontation with John and Delenn. Because they've kissed at that point. They're very close. About to begin a serious relationship. But then you have this of like,
they're very
you
close
told me
to
she
committing.
died. You and Kosh said she died, and now you're saying maybe.
Right, yeah, this is kind of a big revelation, and then suddenly she's here, and Sheridan's life has changed so much, and he has accepted pretty much that Anna is long gone, and then all of a sudden here she is. And now you I feel like Zahadum sort of tries to frame, like, well, did Delenn and Kosh mislead Sheridan about Anna and the shadows this whole freaking time to keep him in their corner? And so once Sheridan kind of goes down that path, he is pissed. Like, what does all this mean now? My world is upside down.
And to me, one thing I thought was, I don't know, I had not as realistic, like, she's obviously wants him to go to Zahadum. Like, that's suspicious.
Like, really bad, too. Look, she's not very
we find
subtle.
Out she's not the real Anna at the end. I'm not, but whatever. But, like, even not knowing that, like, okay, she's your wife. Like, just say you accept that. She wants to go to Zahadum, and I'm like, I'm going to say no.
Well, and, I mean, if you consider how many times he's been warned not to go to Zahadum already.
You will die.
Yeah, this is a bad idea, but JMS says, I think, in Lurker's Guide, people will often make a bad decision knowing it's a bad decision and do it anyway. And I think his big motivation is he wants to know why the shadows do what they do. What is their reason? He wants to know the truth. So even though he knows it's a death trap, he's got to find out.
And also, we didn't mention this, but again, I've seen the show before, but still, the ominous Z- just popping up in the middle of the season. And you're like, what? Like, just like randomly, like, just Z- 14. Like, wait, what? What's going? Why is there a countdown happening? And it just comes up randomly every episode, sometimes twice, and you're like, time is marching on for some reason to what? Z- 13, 12, 10, 8, 3, 1, and then
and now it's 0, and we're like, oh, okay. This isn't going to be good.
And then we get Justin, I believe that's his name, whoever he is. What
do you call him? Like
giving the full
shadow ambassador?
the man in between.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know.
I guess that's how he
know,
describes himself. I guess that's it.
Yeah. But he sort of gives the full, here's the 20-minute exposition on the Vorlons and the Shadows and what this whole thing's about. Order versus chaos. Who's right, who's wrong. What's the best way to get things going? Is it, obeying the rules, or is it, messing everything up and making things better?
Right.
Which is, this is a very long argument.
It's two totally different philosophies colliding, and that's why the Vorlons and the Shadows they don't get along, because the Vorlons don't believe in chaos, and the Shadows feel like evolution comes from chaos by having to better yourself. And I love the fact that this kind of turns things a little bit upside down, where I think we've been, I don't know, up to this point thought of the Vorlons as at least semi-good guys, or at least on our side. But come to find out, well, yeah, but no. I mean... Yeah,
because controlling us, or...
Right. They want us to just do what they say, whereas maybe the Shadows aren't completely the bad guys here.
They want you to be independent. Of course, they also want you to fight each other.
Right.
So it's pro cons.
Yeah.
And that Sheridan has upset the balance by being the unifier, by bringing everyone together to fight. And he's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. These are weak races that you're helping. You're not supposed to, because, weak together is strong. And so then you have that great, with him having the hidden PPG and shooting the Shadow and being bloodied and having secretly put the nuclear bombs on the White Star and being confronted with Anna and the Shadows on the ledge.
Right, cut to the balcony, and he has to choose between joining Anna, whom he knows is not really herself, because once you get into those machines, you aren't ever really kind of you ever again. And
he's pressed the button to have the White Star come crashing down, and it's certain death no matter what he does. And all he hears is Kosh.
Jump now.
And so he jumps, an explosion, and Susan apparently, feels it right away. And then we get that last note from John to Delenn.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I'm crying right along with her.
That is how we end with the Jakar monologue.
Yeah, it closes out the season, and I'm so glad I didn't have to wait a whole summer to find out what happened next. Holy gosh. Watching this in real time, I would have been throwing things at the TV.
Yes. So that's been our season 3. A lot happened, obviously. There's a lot to come.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So, any final thoughts on season 3?
Oh, well, we're in it now, aren't we?
Yes.
The point of no return. Yeah, I mean, this is... I don't know if I would say season 3 is the best season of Babylon 5. I don't know. I kind of I veer between seasons 3 and 4 often as to which one's the best. And it's usually, if I'm watching the show, which season I'm watching at the time. This is definitely, I'd say, a very exciting season, because we've gone past that rising action stage, and now everything is hitting on all the cylinders. Things are happening. Big, freaking, honkin', huge changes every single week with not a whole lot of recovery. I mean, it's intense, and it's only going to continue as we keep going. And so season 3, though, I feel is incredibly strong. I mean, I think you do have some of the best episodes of the series, like Messages from Earth, Severed Dreams, and The Rock Cried Out No Hiding Place, Zahadum. Really good stuff. I feel like pretty much every character has some sort of a moment. We didn't talk at all about Lanier. He was in a coma for a couple of days, saving Londo's life, which was great. It was good to see a little bit of exposition, but everybody gets just a little moment in the sun. Obviously, some characters a lot more than others, because we are, at this point, playing to the bigger characters, because they've got to do the bigger things, like Delenn, Sheridan, Londo, Jakar, Ivanova, and so on. But we are firing on all cylinders at this point, and so this is when, in my opinion, things get really exciting for season 3, especially from Messages from Earth on.
Yes, no, I agree. So I mean, there's really Well, there's lots more to add, but we'll have to stop here. So, Char, where can people find you online to talk to you about Season 3?
Oh, please talk Babylon 5 with me on Twitter. My handle is @OhTheProfanity, and you can also find me elsewhere on the Nerd Party, co-hosting Punch It with Tristan Riddell, and occasionally with Phillip Gilfus, talking Babylon 5 and writing Babylon 5 things. So give that a listen if you haven't done so already. Phillip, where can people find you?
They can find me each and every week on Ceti Alpha 3 here on the Nerd Party Network, along with Darren Moser and Daniel Prue. We talk all things Star Trek, that other sci-fi franchise. And they can find me on Twitter @NCPublicServant. All right, Char, it's time to go on to Season 4 and see what the heck's going to happen as all the pieces fall from the ceiling, or in this case, the bottomless pit.
I'm so glad we have the White Star Fleet at last, because we finally have a fighting chance.
You're running out of time.
Cannot run out of time. There is infinite time. You are finite. Zathras is finite. This is wrong tool.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.